Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, beautiful ones. So grateful to be hanging out with you on this Friday afternoon here in Melbourne. And I just felt like coming by and saying hello and having a little chat about something that I know I probably take for granted 11 years into the Institute, but is worth talking about because I hope you've seen we are talking all about the teacher archetype in the Institute and my sense of connection to a bigger archetypal energy as teacher of teachers. And really, why this matters to me and why it should matter to you, especially in regards to the subject of intuition. If we are on the spiritual path, there is no doubt that intuition is going to come up somewhere, right? It is part of the language of the spiritual seeker. And that's why it always surprised me that we engage with it largely in a really superficial way. And I want to talk about what they mean because I'm not just trying to talk trash about people who teach intuition. As a researcher, it was a really important problem for me to solve and a really important subject for me to do my research on, to understand more, to learn more. And I'll give you a little background to how the Institute came up with this philosophy, this theory on intuition, which is often diametrically opposed to how most intuition training is taught. So, when I started out on my journey to increase my own intuition, pretty much everything that I could enroll in was based on me connecting to my intuition to give that to someone else, right? So for them to ask a question or for me to tap into what they were feeling, my first formal intuition training was a circle effectively where we'd go around the circle and we'd all take our turns connecting to our intuition and sharing messages for one another. And that might sound familiar to you. Maybe you've done it with the focus on an oracle card or a tarot deck or on connecting through mediumship or some other strategy connecting to guides. But the idea is largely the highest outcome of most intuition training was you are learning how to increase your intuition so that you can then access intuitive knowing for someone else. This was the first problem for me, and I'll tell you why. What I was seeing in the teachers that I had was that they might be good at holding the space for us to do that, to strengthen our intuitive muscle, but their lives were often not a demonstration of being connected to this superpower of intuition. They weren't needing to be perfect. I wasn't looking for, gurus who had perfect lives where everything was working, but they were often people who were living lives that seemed untouched by their own intuition. So they might be really competent at sharing intuitive wisdom that was really amazing for someone else, but they weren't embodying that. Their lives were not a demonstration of that. And I'm like, well, if you are devoted to intuition and you're connected to your own intuition so well, why aren't you using that for yourself? And part of the problem that we have with this conversation about intuition is that we default to its primary power or best use being to give it away, to give it to someone else, not as a way to get to know ourselves better. Now, we might incidentally draw cards for ourselves or connect to our guides or whatever, but we're still defaulting to this idea that an intuitive is someone who does intuition for someone else. And that did not work for me. It did not sit well with me, mostly because I was seeing people who were meant to be the embodiment of what I was hoping to learn, but not demonstrating that. Again, no judgment there. I was just really curious. And as a researcher, I wanted to learn more and understand why. That led me down this rabbit hole of understanding from my own lived experience and from those that I was witnessing that intuition can very much be tapped into not as a spiritual function. And that also felt really weird to me, right? If I am increasing my access to the language of infinite consciousness, that is undoubtedly a path of spiritual awakening. I can't fathom it to be any other way. And yet again, I was seeing people who were in no way connected to their own spiritual evolution, even if they identified as spiritual. Because, of course, we understand that a lot of people have the tropes of spirituality, but are not really invested in healing their own lives. It's easy to channel great intuitive wisdom for someone else, to offer really profound insights to another person's life. It is much harder to then embody that deep knowing and make the changes in our own life. And this power imbalance was a really big issue for me. And I had one teacher in particular who just was such a, a classic archetype of that do as I say, not as I do energy. And I was just, young, highly impressionable, but already calling BS on it, very confused. I also worked for years as a shop psychic, and that was an amazing apprenticeship to understand how people come to intuitives to abdicate personal responsibility for their own lives, right? They don't want to figure out from their own deep knowing what the right action is, what the best choice is. They want to imagine that someone else has this magic box of wisdom that they can't personally access that gives them the right answer, right? So people come to intuitives, whether healers, guides, mentors, often wanting them to have the best answer, to have the information that will guarantee their success, that will protect them from harm, that will make them feel safe and comfortable. No, this did also not work for me. And, I remember like I had one client at that time. Again, I was really young, I was finding my way with all of this. And I learned a lot about what I do now that is very different to what I did then. Who would come like every choice. Should I sell my house? Which real estate agent should I use? Should I kick this boyfriend out? Should I buy that dog? Right? It didn't matter how small the decision. She did not trust herself at all. And I remember I started using Byron Katie's The Work in these shop psychic sessions, even though it was outside of this idea of I'll just read the cards or, tap in and tell you the answer, because I could not handle that these people would keep coming back to me but never change anything within themselves to increase access to their own wisdom and increase their own self-trust. Now, this is not because they're bad or wrong. It is because we are rarely given the training that we need to increase access to our own intuition, to trust ourselves, and to act upon that intuition in our own lives. So we are doing a disservice in a really dark and shadowy way when we keep giving people the answers without showing them that they, in fact, have that knowledge. Because all an intuitive is doing is accessing your wisdom, your subtle body, your karma, your dharma. They're not going out into some random universe where that's all stored. They are communicating with you energetically, and that information is in you, right? By the way, sidebar, there is no right or wrong answer. There is only a choice made from love or from fear. That's another day's live. But I was left wanting, and so I started researching more and more to understand. And what I came to was that realization that until you feel safe in your own being, your own nervous system, your own body, your own story, your own subtle body, until you have started to do the work of meeting and releasing your own subconscious fear programs, you cannot increase access to your intuition. And that is what intuitive training should have been doing, not teaching people how to read cards for someone else, but how to mine their subconscious programs to meet and release the blocks and obstacles to this infinite consciousness to which we are all inherently connected and all have equal right to access. So I train intuition in others as a tool of self healing, of self trust, of self reliance, so that they can support others to do the same, right? And this is, I say it all the time, but it is truly revolutionary because the inherent assumption in almost all intuition training is that we ultimately are learning how to do this so that we can give others the answers, not to empower others with their own connection to their intuition. It doesn't matter whether that is said overtly or it's just in there in the way that people don't know that there is another option. And without that willingness to be not only our own oracle, but then to create self reliance, we simply perpetuate the nightmare of separation. We, even as intuitives who say we want to heal and support and guide others, are actually holding others in their limits. And that is not good enough for me. So I researched more and more about understanding the true function of intuition, how it works, the evidence that is available, and bringing it together with the classical spiritual wisdom to understand what true healing is. And, you know, there's a saying that the ancient Egyptian priestesses would say that sickness or illness was chaos at the level of the subatomic particle. And so when we look at that in a broader way, we can see that what is being offered there is that when someone is in dysregulation, when they're in the chaos of their unmet subconscious fears, when they're in their shadows as a dominant way of engaging with their lives, there is chaos, and that chaos is a preventative for intuitive knowing landing. Intuition cannot land into an unprepared vessel. So stress, anxiety, worry, self-doubt, all of this range of the heavier emotional states block our innate access. The access doesn't go anywhere, but we don't feel confident in our connection to it. So to increase someone's intuition, we need to prepare the vessel. And that's really where the work began. And I made it all about meeting and releasing subconscious fear, which is the only true form of healing. Whether you want more intuition or you want a healthier body or whether you want more abundance in your life. So that is a little bit of the insight into what it is that intuitive intelligence is as a state of being versus intuition, which is often something we think about consciously or unconsciously as a tool that we would use to support someone else. I mean, you can try and tell me I'm wrong, but like, give me an example of where that is not the case. It is so difficult to find intuition training that is solely about changing your subconscious relationship to your truth and to open to that truth. What I am offering now in this role as teacher of teachers is this opportunity for you to empower others by teaching them this revolutionary approach to intuition development. And the ripple effect of that, I hope and pray and intend, is that we all reclaim our inner authority. You know, I'm writing the book now, You Know What to Do. But it could just as easily be called You Don't Know What to Do, because the truth is most of us are in the fog of our dysregulation, our nervous system shut down, our fear response, our fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. We are not prepared vessels for our intuitive knowing. And so we don't know what to do, right? And we live in this constant, exhausting dance between an intuitive knowing arriving and then the doubt coming with it and then shutting us down. And we don't take action. So, really, for me, this ripple needs to go out as far and wide as possible. And that is why I am committed to training those who lead their communities, those who lead others in this approach to intuition development. What I have coming up, starting on Monday, the 30th of June, in my time zone in Melbourne, Australia, is the Teach with Power Masterclass series. And this is 4 1 hour masterclasses on the subject of spiritual teaching more broadly. Obviously, intuition's my jam, so we're going to touch on that. But it's more about the template of how we empower ourselves, trust ourselves, turn on that inner authority, design life changing curriculum, understand pedagogy, teaching and learning, how we move from, just really great sales page and bright, shiny slides to actually bringing substance to what we teach. And a lot of it, of course, crosses over with the conversation around intuition and being willing and humble to meet our own upper limits around not only leading, but stepping into the teacher archetype. I'll share the details here. I would love for you to join me, especially if you are considering Acharya, which is our certified intuition teacher program starting in late September. And that is all about becoming that revolutionary intuition teacher. And it is so freaking exciting. It isn't only for those who want to or have businesses in the world already. It is like intuition boot camp. It is going to ramp up your intuitive intelligence to supersonic levels, as well as empowering you to transfer that knowledge, the embodied practices, to others. So that is a little bit of the background, because that aspect of, when you know better, you do better is so important to me. And I could see this really big hole, this really big problem in what I was being sold as intuition development. And I didn't want to stay in that superficial trinkets and superstitions. I didn't want to imagine that if I bought the right crystal, that I would suddenly know ease in my life and neutralize the trauma from my childhood, and suddenly be able to have better, healthier relationships with the world and myself. It's like, yeah, no, that's not going to work, right? Because everything is about the quality of our belief. So it doesn't matter if someone else has said that crystal will do all those things, right? If there is still that subconscious fear block that I am not worthy of a successful, happy, healthy life, then I could buy all the crystals and all I would have is a nice pile of crystals. I would not have changed anything in my subconscious programming. I'd probably be poorer. And this spiritual retail therapy is often a starting point for people, right? They'll wander into a crystal or new age shop, they'll buy a book or an oracle deck and hope that something's going to change. And that is a precious yearning that is so often then exploited by people who I hope are only just don't know better, not actually intentionally trying to cause harm, to keep that person away from their own true healing, and to keep them in this superficial, shallow end of the pool of what is possible when we truly prepare the vessel to be our own oracle. I would love to hang out with you some more. Come and spend some time with me if you are getting to know me in the Teach with Power Masterclass, or if you are a spiritual teacher who wants some professional development, some scaffolding, some support. I am so excited to be able to empower teachers. It's a big job, right? And for those of you who are yearning to step more into this may be your permission slip to recognize that you have everything that you need. So I'll share the details. Come hang out with me and let's teach with power. So much love.